Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Psych 300. This is your last in-class day of the semester. If that doesn't ring a bell, then make sure you're checking your email so you have an update about how we're moving the rest of our content online for the last week of class. Today, we're going to talk about industrial organizational psychology. I have a few introductory slides for you, and then we are excited to have some really awesome guest speakers who are professionals in this field to talk about their experience. So we're going to look at some definitions, some duties and work settings, what graduate school looks like for industrial organizational psychology, ways to get prepared now. We'll talk a little bit about related careers at the bachelor's level, and then we'll have our guest speakers for the rest of class. Just as a quick reminder, there should be a lot of time for any questions you have at the end of the discussion today with our guest speakers. So now's a good time to start jotting down any questions that you might want to ask them so that you don't forget. All right, so let's talk about IO psychology. So a little bit of vocabulary is defining what the difference is between industrial versus organizational psychology. So the industrial side of these definitions really focuses on the individual employee and making decisions around that employee. So it might be selecting from a pool of applicants the best folks for the job. It might be deciding how to best place someone in the right type of job that's going to make them successful. It might be things related to evaluating employee performance along the way or training personnel to make sure that they stay successful in their job. On the other side, the O stands for organizational psychology, and traditionally this term means focusing on the workplace or the company characteristics. So it's really a little bit more macro level or bigger level processes. So it might be thinking about issues such as productivity. How do we get the most out of our employees and having them be as productive as possible? Considering overall well-being of the organization and the individuals who work there. Big picture things like structure, leadership roles, worker satisfaction, and how to manage changes that might happen. So if a company has a plant that's shutting down and they need to transfer a bunch of people from one location to another, how do they do that as smoothly as possible in a way that keeps their employees as happy as possible or as able to have some control of their job as possible. Now, originally, these kind of started out as two fairly separate concepts, but in reality, they really are quite overlapping. So we can think of this as obviously any decisions about an individual employee affects the company and vice versa. Now, as a career field, industrial organizational psychology is fairly robust and successful field. It tends to pay pretty well. It's considered a highly ranked science-related job. Average salaries are about $82,000, whereas depending on where you work, you could make quite a bit more than that. The 75th percentile, for instance, makes $137,000. There are a lot of jobs in this field in the tech industry and big companies. So you might see a lot of these jobs in bigger cities like San Francisco, San Jose, or LA, for example. It's also a growth field, so there is opportunity for more and more of these positions coming in the near future. Now, industrial organizational psychologists tend to work in three main areas: consultation, administration, and research. Consultation might be really providing people with expertise, and they pay you for that individual work that you do. You might be self-employed, you might travel a lot as a consultant and consult to many different firms and give your expertise to those different firms. On the other hand, you might work for one particular company, and maybe you are involved in administration at that company. So you might be a manager, a trainer, a director, in some kind of a leadership role that focuses on the well-being of that organization and the employees there. A third arm that is quite common in this field is research, whether that is doing research within a company or in academia as a professor or a research scholar, Or as you're going to hear from our colleagues today, our guest speakers today, you might be doing research for the government or in support of government decision making. If you're interested in a career in IO Psych, you can pursue this at the master's level. You'll get a little bit less depth in your training, and you might not be available, not as many jobs will be available to you as if you did pursue the doctorate. You can see table 9.1 for a bit more information there. A little bit more common is probably pursuing a doctorate in IO psychology. This is an interesting field where some people do pursue licensure, but it's really considered optional, and I'd say most people probably don't pursue a license in this area. It's not needed if you're going to work in academia or in management, but if you do pursue a license, you get a little bit more flexibility to quote unquote practice in psychology. So if you're unlicensed, which is quite common, you'd be considered a consultant rather than a psychologist. And if you're looking for graduate programs, you're going to notice that they might have a lot of different titles or names in them. So you might see things like applied psychology with an IO concentration. You might see human resources and management, or traditionally an IO psychology program. There might be words like organizational behavior or organizational psychology, or even social and organizational psychology. So you want to be aware that you might find these different names, and they all have a different emphasis, but a lot of them are going to fall in this IO field in general. So you might be interested in researching programs and wondering, do their students tend to get licensed? What kind of work are their students doing now? This link at the bottom will give you a nice video about some more information about graduate school in IO Psych. As an undergraduate, important classes are going to be your research, statistics, testing and measurement, and your social psych classes. Those are going to be especially relevant fields to carry forward. If you have the room in your schedule to take additional statistics classes or business classes or computer science classes, those could be especially relevant topics. Research labs in psychology or business could help round out your experience in the research arena. And pursuing internships in business settings might be especially relevant. As one example of relevant experience, there are student assistants that get hired by our university personnel or our HR department here at CSUMB. That could be the type of position to look for. Now, of course, there are related careers with a bachelor's degree in management and human resources. So management positions fall in all sorts of different fields. So you might work for any of a variety of types of companies where you might be involved in hiring, supervising, or training people. And you might have an important input into decision-making processes for that business. If you work specifically for a human resources department, you'd be especially likely to be involved in things like hiring, training, promoting individuals, terminating if someone needs to be unfortunately fired from a job, and employee payments. So some examples of titles like this might be benefits coordinators, personnel administrators, or HR associates. All right, before we transition to our guest speakers, I just have a couple of really important quick announcements that our Chapter 9 quiz, if you do this as one of your Choose 3 quizzes, is due tonight, 11:59 p.m. Actually, I forgot that all of the quizzes for this week I extended through Sunday. So chapters 12, 13, and 9, I actually extended all 3 of them to be closing Sunday. So if you are behind on your Choose 3 quizzes, now's your chance to catch up. Make sure you do 3 quizzes by this Sunday. And then also importantly, your ePortfolio assignment, assignment 8, is also due tonight at 11:59 p.m. So if you have questions about that, emailing me earlier rather than later is really important so that we can get you the support you need. All right. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers, Dr. Shannon Sawyer and Dr. Alicia Usher-Perez, who are both IO psychologists, and they'll tell you more about their experience. As a quick reminder, please put away technology that might distract you from their presentation and be a wonderful audience member to them. Thank you all so much. Bye.